Hello, if you've been following this weekly mini-series, this is the third session. As we strive to create a new normal and move ourselves and those around us forward, how do we stay positive and continue forward when the realities of the circumstances surrounding us can leave us feeling pretty grim and depressed, and our spirits can be obviously pretty down? Most of us are now 3 to even 5 weeks of real disruption in our lives with no definitive end in sight. It's easy to understand how this can lead to sadness and even feeling of helplessness. It's pretty depressing news, and that can lead to apathy and an almost paralyzing feeling that there's nothing we can do. It can feel like a downward spiral of negativity that, if not controlled and turned, will continue to pull us down. So how do we reverse the spiral and pull ourselves and those around us up and continue moving forward, even when the circumstances surrounding us in the present are pretty dire? The secret is in our perception of what it is that we believe is within our control. Within our curriculum, we use an illustration to explain the locus of control. On one end of a horizontal line is outside me. On the other end is inside me. And like a ruler, it has many measurement points in between. For every event, piece of news, or change that happens as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, we place an internal marker on that scale that reflects our belief, our perception of our control over that situation. The more we perceive our control is outside me, the more powerless and paralyzing it can feel. In order to release our potential in each of us and those around us, we need to slide that marker away from outside me toward inside me. As that marker begins to slide on that scale toward inside me, we identify, we decide, we create, we problem solve, and most importantly, we act. Rather than feeling paralyzed by the perception of little or no control because it's all outside me, we turn in and focus our attention on what we can do, what is in our control, despite the circumstances that are outside of us. So how do we move the marker and turn that locus of control inside me? First, understand that the present reality of the circumstances surrounding the pandemic has impacted what you are feeling and how those feelings impact what you are doing. Second, know that these feelings are a direct response to those circumstances and your perception as to whether those events have taken control from you, outside me, or it still resides inside you. 3, that sliding the marker towards inside me happens through a process that has identifiable stages. And 4th, through identification, labeling, and understanding, you can progress through these stages to strengthen your locus of control to inside me. More than 50 years ago, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross published On Death and Dying, inspired by her work with terminally ill patients. Her groundbreaking work has served to help many deal more constructively with grief through an understanding that grief has stages and real feelings associated with each stage, and that through a systematic process of identifying, labeling, and describing the stages, grieving could become more manageable by moving the locus of control marker to inside me through education and understanding. Kubler-Ross identified the stages of grief as denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance. She referred to them as stages, but they are not necessarily reached in order, and through the process of grieving, we may go back and forth between the stages. But ultimately, the path forward is through acceptance. She continued her work for many decades and later co-authored with David Kessler, who's widely known as the world's foremost expert on grief today. I read an interview with David Kessler this week in the Harvard Business Review, where he paralleled the experience of grieving the loss of a loved one to grieving the circumstances caused by the coronavirus pandemic. The stages of grief: denial. The virus won't affect me. It only affects people over 75. I'm not going to change what I do. So what if I get sick? Then I'll get better. What's the big deal? Besides, what are the odds I'll get it in the first place? Anger. Why are we canceling sporting events and concerts? Why are we closing schools? What do you mean we can't gather? What do you mean bars and restaurants are closing? You can't take away my freedoms. Bargaining. Social distancing for a couple of weeks, but I will be able to get together with my friends after that, right? Okay, eliminating large gatherings probably makes sense, but the baseball season will start by May, right? When bargaining, we falsely believe that we can avoid further grief through some type of negotiation. Sadness. Think of all the things we are missing. We're not going to school, we're not seeing our friends, we're not going to work, graduations, wedding receptions, holidays, we can't visit extended family or loved ones. Look at the statistics of sick and dying across our nation, across the world. When will we reach the peak and begin recovering? Acceptance. This is the life we are living. This is the reality of our life for the next few weeks and perhaps the next couple months. Therefore, how do we move forward? What are the things that I or my family can do? We can stay in. We can wash our hands. We can use sanitizer. We can work from home. We can go to school from home. We can observe social distancing when we do need to go out. The stage of acceptance is where the power resides. We restore our locus of control through understanding that grieving is a process and that the shift happens when we reach acceptance. Unfortunately, the stages are not linear. We don't necessarily go through them in order, but instead we find ourselves going in and out of the stages as we grieve new information and events. Whether it is grieving the loss of a loved one or the circumstances that come through living through a pandemic, we gain control and stop the downward spiral and turn it by identifying the aspects of each stage, understanding that it's normal to grieve in stages and the feelings associated with each, then moving the locus of control from outside to inside by striving towards acceptance. It is in the acceptance stage where our perception of locus of control shifts to inside me. When we believe that we do have control, we mobilize on those perceptions. Whether it is on behalf of the health and welfare of our family, continuing education, or performing our job most effectively in a remote setting, adhering to guidelines or recommendations as to each of us can limit the spread of the virus, conserving resources, optimizing connection between friends and family in new and creative ways. We see and act on a whole host of things because we perceive our control is inside me, despite what is happening on the outside. David Kessler finished the Harvard Business Review interview with a final thought. He asked us to stock up on compassion. He said, everyone will have different levels of fear and grief, and it manifests in different ways. So be patient. Grieving is a natural human process. Grieving the coronavirus pandemic is very real for many of us and our loved ones. Locus of control resides in the stage of acceptance. Through acceptance, we mobilize, we act, we do, because our perception of control shifts inward. The release of our potential, the potential within our family, the potential within our businesses, the potential within our nation, resides in sliding that marker to inside me so we focus and act on all that we perceive is within our control. Be well and stay healthy.